These are soft pastels, or chalk pastels, as some people like to call them. They come in a variety of colors. We have boxes of 24. What makes these unique is that they provide a nice coverage of color when applied to paper, and you can blend them fairly easily. Some people really like them. When you blend with a paper towel, blending stump, Q-tip, something like that. Otherwise, you run the risk of getting your oils in there, and then that makes it more difficult to blend. If you're going to use this, you want a paper that has some texture or tooth to it, and you want to be sure that you keep areas you don't want color on covered, because it will leave color on there. So you can see here that I blended or laid down several different colors, and then I'm going to take a paper towel and just kind of blend them together. Some people really like the look. Gives kind of a soft all over look to it. You can see that you can continue to blend out the colors as you go. Also leaves a bit more of a mess. There's a level of amount that you can put on before it just starts to fall off of the paper, because the paper's tooth can only handle so much. Some people will set it with a setting spray like workable fixative and then go back and add more layers. It's also very easy to make these get too muddy. So that's something else to consider when you're working. And you can kind of see, at least maybe not from the video, but there's lines there from where I had been drawing before, and it left little marks in there. I wanted to show you another way that you could work with pastels by creating little piles of pastel chalk dust. And the way that I did that is I took my pastel and a sharp blade and just scraped a little bit of it off into a little puddle of dust. Now some people like to do this, and then they use a Q-tip to spread it with. However, I'm going to use a paintbrush today. The drawing that I did was of a mouse, computer mouse, and I'm not using the colors that belong to the actual mouse. I'm just going to put in colors that I want to. I'm working on regular drawing papers, so it might be a bit more difficult for me to really get all of the colors laid in there. Try to avoid blowing the pastel because you've got like leftover dust on there, because it'll just blow onto somebody else's work. And always put newspaper underneath where you're working so that you can clean up easily. Now this is with a flat edge brush. You can see that I'm getting some lines in there. So I'm going to try it with a rounded brush. We've been doing this in the classroom and using a much softer, fluffier brush, and it seems to be working fairly nicely. Kind of a neat technique. This works best, as I said, if you're working on paper. If you've got scratch art, more than likely the pastel will not stick to the scratch art paper. So that is something to keep in mind. And, you know, brush it off to the side to get the extra dust off that you want. You can see going around in circles is always a good idea to get the color spread out. And this is called using arbitrary color. If you use the same colors that the object is, it's local color. If you use whatever colors you want, that's usually called arbitrary color. And it can be a lot of fun. Kind of mix it up a little bit. Anyhow, this is how you go ahead and do this. And you could come back if you wanted to, and you could add in more with the actual pastel if you wanted to. And you could spray this and come back and add another layer on top. Spraying usually darkens up the drawing. Some people don't like that. Some people like to keep this nice softness of it. So that's something to keep in mind when you're working, that can happen as well. And again, you can see that I can do some nice blending just by what I'm doing here. But anywhere that this gets, it's probably going to stay. Sometimes you can use a kneaded rubber eraser to remove some of the pastel. You could even use like a little pouncing method. Real gentle is how I'm working. And my final, this was my little puddle of dust that I have. I'm going to take this, knock off the extra, and you can see that I've got a fairly colorful, keeping in mind the pencil lines will still show through. So I kind of like the idea of combining or creating pencil lines that are so light using your 6H pencil that you won't see them in the final piece. If you want to blow, go over the trash can and blow it off over the trash can. All right, that is Pastels.